Hello all you Dark Souls loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic, and today we're taking a preview look at Deck 13's upcoming Souls inspired sci-fi game The Surge, which is being published by Focus Home Interactive. The Surge places you in the role of Warren, a man who wakes up in a derelict factory with various cybernetic implants connected to him. Those of you who have seen Matt Damon's sci-fi film Elysium will be right at home with the premise of this game. Warren is equipped with an Elysium-style rig that can be upgraded and kitted out with a bunch of equipment. Now, this is not Deck 13's first attempt at a Souls-style game. They were the developers behind the flawed Lords of the Fallen game, so the question is, does The Surge do a better job than Lords of the Fallen did? So based on the limited preview build, I can say that so far, yes it does in a big way. The first major clues that The Surge is much more true to the Souls-like design, and that the execution of said design is much better than the previous attempts, is in the core gameplay itself. The movement of the character, whether it be mouse and keyboard or controller, is very smooth, it is very reactive, it's responsive, and it is very much more of a game that when you fail it is your fault rather than problems inherent to the core design. The combat itself is very much Souls focused, so it is a case of you have light attack, you have a light attack and a heavy attack, and both of those are reflected into you either have a vertical attack or a horizontal attack, and the combinations between the two vary from weapon to weapon. There are a multitude, and I mean a multitude of weapons to choose from, but where this core design focus lies in terms of the combat and in terms of the movement, it is much more a Dark Souls-like game than I would say Lords of the Fallen was. Lords of the Fallen it took elements of Dark Souls and put a little bit more action orientated in there, whereas this is very much in line with Dark Souls design in the sense that the controls are fluid and responsive. It is very much about accuracy, it's very much about timing, it's very much about learning the enemy's mechanics, and if you fail, it is likely, more than likely, probably, definitely your fault. What I like about The Surge thus far compared to Dark Souls is the fact that I prefer the setting. The sci-fi setting, that dystopian sci-fi future, is a lot more interesting to me than the fantasy-driven Dark Souls series, and I understand that the Dark Souls series has a lot of lore and it has a lot of story, but it's a case of you had to go and explore and piece together clues in that universe, whereas The Surge is a much more story-driven game. The story is much more upfront, there's plenty of voice acting, there's audio logs you can listen to, and all of those little elements appeal to me subjectively versus the Dark Souls franchise. When you take The Surge and you compare it to Lords of the Fallen as it stands, even just within this preview build itself, you can see the strides that have been made. The execution is so much better. I always found that Lords of the Fallen was just really unsure of itself. It was a first attempt, there were problems, it didn't flesh out enough what it wanted to do, whereas The Surge, it comes and hits you in the face like a jackhammer. It says, this is the game, this is what the differences are in terms of the twists on the franchise, and it executes them all really well. Now let's talk about those twists, because we know the core of the combat is very similar. It is, it's a game where you have to learn the mechanics and then you have to use dodge, you have to block, you have to be careful and, choose your engagements wisely and then come out on top with skill. But there are twists here. So for example, combat and progression are now intertwined. Within combat itself, you can select a body part to attack. Some enemies will, for example, have lots of body armor and lots of arm armor, but they might be weak on the head and legs, and you can target specific limbs to do damage to that limb. Not only that, but once you've damaged a limb enough, you are able to execute it. You are able to literally rip that limb off the enemy, which will kill the enemy, and it will also grant you sometimes either loot or items to use or components to use to build more items and equipment. So how does this execute itself in terms of the gameplay? Well, so for example, if you see an enemy with a chainsword and you think, holy crap, that chainsword arm looks really nice, I would like that, then you can target that body part and literally remove that chainsword from that guy's arm and now use it as equipment. And that is so much fun. The downside to that is that once you progress a little bit further into the game, you find that your character kind of looks like a patchwork of all these different equipment and technology, but it's a really fun concept that's executed really well, and it provides, and I've no doubt that this will be the case in the full version, that it will provide a lot of depth and a lot of variety within how you build your character, what you equip your character with. Even in the preview build, there was a ton of weapons and armor to use. You can equip different pieces of armor to each limb, essentially. So you've got body, you've got head, you've got arms, you've got legs, and then on top of that, you've of course got weapons. There's a ton of different weapons. They all do different things. They all have different stats. They all have different attack speeds. Each one plays and feels very differently. So a chainsword is going to be fairly quick and it's going to have a decent amount of combos, but then if you use this giant wrench, this like almost robotic sized wrench, that is going to be slow. The animations and executions on each weapon are also different, so you know, cutting off the head with a chainsaw is going to look very different than cutting off a head with a giant pole. One thing that did impress me with the preview build, and especially when you compare it to that of Lords of the Fallen, was the level design. I really appreciated the level design in the Surge. There was multiple paths, there were secrets, there was ways to get back to the assembly, which is the place where you go back to progress. You have to, in terms of the progression of the assembly, you're able to equip new items and armor. You are able to build those items by gaining schematics. You're able to upgrade existing weapons and armor, and then you have to also use salvage tech, which you gain from killing enemies, to upgrade your core, which basically increases your level, and it also grants you access to new areas as well as new items and improving your base stats. Your character also has implants as well, so you can use those implants to do a variety of different things depending on which implants you have. But back to the level design. The level design, I found it to be maze-like, almost very Dark Souls-like, much better than Lords of the Fallen. I found that in terms of, you know, creating this sci-fi world, and the preview build was majoritarily set in a factory style setting, so there was dark corridors, there was power plants, there was, you know, large open spaces, and then there was short narrow spaces, and you had to adapt to those spaces, not including the fact that you had to use the environment sometimes to really get an advantage over your enemy. So if there was a particularly fast enemy coming at you, it might be, you know, you need to plant yourself in enough space so that you can dodge out of the way. You know, enemies have unblockable attacks. If you try to block a lunging attack, you're going to get damaged. And there was multiple things about that level design: the layered, the verticality, the, you know, it created almost a atmosphere of mystique about the entire world, that you did not know what was going to be around that next corner, which is the exact same feeling that you do have with Dark Souls. You have to be careful about just running around a corner because there could be an enemy that could two-shot you. And that was very much the case with the Surge, and I really did appreciate that about it. My biggest concerns with the Surge aren't inherent to the core design. My biggest concerns is, while this preview build really impressed me and it was a lot of fun, it was difficult, and I hated that difficulty sometimes. It very much gave me that Dark Souls feeling of, I died against this boss like 3,000 times now and it's really starting to piss me off. But my problem is, can they keep this up through an entire game? How long is this going to be, and will they be able to keep up this level of quality, and will they have enough enemy variety throughout the game to keep things interesting? Because this preview build was really solid from start to finish, performance wise, graphically, audibly, all hit the spot for a top game. But the question is, can they maintain this quality through an entire game? And I don't know, and I suppose that is the question that will be answered upon full launch. Until that time, we can only guess. I think that if they manage to do and maintain that quality throughout an entire game, have plenty of boss battles, plenty of enemy variety throughout the levels, plenty of diverse levels. Don't just set it in this factory where everything's falling to bits. Give me some interesting levels to go through different areas, and maintain the quality of the story and make that story a very interesting story, and make it so that, you know, you are given a purpose for continuing. If they manage to do that, then this is a sure bet to go down as a hit. If it is a case of the preview build's really good and the first couple of levels are really good, and then it kind of tailors off and there's a lack of enemy variety, there's a lack of new mechanics, there's a lack of new areas and that kind of thing towards the latter of the game in terms of the full version, then it is going to be a bit of a disappointment that starts off strong but then gets weaker as you go. If they manage to maintain that sense of quality throughout the product though, I cannot wait for the full version, and it is probably one of the only Dark Souls-esque games that has really interested me in the last few years. So that is my Surge preview. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know what your thoughts are on the game in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, share the video on social media, and as always, I will see you next time.